you are here. Hopefully that means that you're interested in some yoga philosophy. It's a really open forum, casual, so anytime you have a question or a comment, feel free to interrupt me and say what you'd like. And so we get to know each other, just say your name when you speak, so we get to know each other a little bit. Is anybody actually familiar with the Hatha Yoga Pradipika? Good. Okay. How do you know it?
Read it.
Cool.
Read it.
Good. Cool. It's a pretty. And on the one hand, it's a really kind of archaic text that not too many people know about or study. And on the other hand, it's the basis of all Hatha Yoga, which is basically any yoga that you do in the whole world, physical practice at least. So it's a really important book. It's a couple of thousand years old, and it does focus on the more physical aspects of the yoga practice, but more in depth than you would get just going to an asana class. So we will do some asanas, but it focuses on other types of physical practices too, and then it gets really deep into what the different effects are of the physical practices. So way beyond physical and physiological, it gets into mental, emotional, spiritual aspects of what all of these practices do for us. So it really helps to give more depth to your asana practice as well. So I don't know what's keeping Catherine. Maybe she was actually going to another class.
Yeah, I think she was.
Oh, she was?
With the orange hat?
Yeah.
Yes, she was.
Oh, I thought she was coming here. I talked to her earlier. Okay. So I like to start out with like a 5-minute meditation every week. And just to, get us grounded and tune in and, get us tuned into each other's energy and a higher energy. Mm-hmm. And also just so you can just sort of learn hone your tool of observation. So your whole meditation practice is just observing your breath, observing your mind, observing your physical body, just noticing things that come up, and then consciously choosing not to attach to them, just letting them pass by like clouds in the sky. And then actually observing too, after the 5 minutes, like the effects of your meditation. Does it change anything for you from before you walk in the room and after? And it doesn't matter if you do notice any changes or not. Again, it's just that honing of the skill of observation, which is really important in all yoga practices. Right? So just close the eyes to begin. Be comfortable. So if you want to lean into your back jack or sit taller, however is comfortable for you. And just takes a moment to place your physical body, so your legs can be crossed or straight or whatever feels right. Your hands face up, face down, one side, the other. Again, whatever is comfortable for you. And try to find some length in your spine. So reach your tailbone down, reach the crown of your head up. Tuck your chin in slightly. Let your shoulder blades move together behind you, then gently relax the tops of your shoulders down. So you should be nice and open across the chest, all through the spine. That'll help your breath flow more freely. Go ahead and bring some attention to that breath. Start to gently, with not much effort, just a little bit of focus, just start to lengthen your inhale. Deep in the exhale. So keep the belly soft, face soft. Just let the belly expand as you fill up with air. And just let it contract on its own momentum as you exhale the air. And just take a moment to scan your various bodies before we begin. Notice any gripping or holding in your physical body. Notice your general state of mind. Do you have certain thoughts that are cycling around, or is your mind agitated about something? emotions in the same way? What's your general mood today? And then let all of those things go. Come back to your breath, observing the inhale and the exhale. We'll begin with the sound of Om 3 times. Take a deep, full inhale to begin. Keeping your eyes closed. Just choose one point of focus, maybe the point between your eyebrows, or the tip of your nose, or the center of your chest, whatever is calling your attention the most. Doesn't really matter, just choose one spot. And imagine that you are very, very tiny, and you are standing on that spot. Your whole being is on that one little point, concentrated. And there you stand, just observing as the breath flows into the body, right through you, past you, around you, and flows back out through you, past you, around you. by the way. I just like that word. So you've got the Sanskrit there, and then you have the transliteration, which is how we would say it in English, and then you have the translation too. So chanting is itself a really powerful yoga practice. So we are going to chant each verse before we study it. Or actually, we made it all the way to verse 2. so it is the one that starts, not the first one, but it's the one that starts pranayama. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. And then the translation is on the back.
Oh, pranamya. Okay, pranamya. I was like, what does pranayama have to do with that? Pranamya. Okay. So I have a little Sanskrit study, but I'm their scholar, so I'm learning with you too, and we'll struggle through it as well. So it's basically like written out kind of like Spanish is, like you pronounce every single letter and word, and if there's an accent up over the S, it means sh, it's an SH sound. And if it has a straight one over it, means is you hold it a little bit longer than you would the other ones. Okay, so I'll do kind of one word at a time and then start to string them together. So I'll do it and you just repeat after me. Pranamya, pranamya, Shri Gurum, Shri Gurum, Natam, Natam, Svatmaramena, Svatmaramena, Yogina, Yogina, Kevalam, Kevalam, Raja Yogaya, Raja Yogaya, Hatha Vidyo, Hatha Vidyo, Padishyate, Padishyate.
I do not know.
Let's string some of that together. Pranamya Shri Guram, Pranamya Shri Guram, Natam Svatmaremana, Natam Svatmaremana, Yogina, Yogina, Kevalam Raja Yogaya, Kevalam Raja Yogaya, Hatha Vidyopadishyate, Hatha Vidyopadishyate, Pranamya Shri Guru Natam Svatmaramena Yogina, Pranamya Shri Guru Natam Svatmaramena Yogina, Kevalam Raja Yogaya, Hatha Kevalam Raja Yogaya, Hatha Vidyopadishyate. Kevalam Raja Yogaya, Hatha Vidyopadishyate. Okay, let's try to do the whole thing. Pranamya Shri Gurum Natam Svatmaramena Yogina, Kevalam Raja Yogaya, Hatha Vidyopadishyate. Pranamya Shri Gurum Natam Svatmaramena Yogina, Kevalam Raja Yogaya, Hatha Vidyopadishyate. Good job. One more time together. Pranamya Shri Gurum Natam Svatmaramena Yogina, Kevalam Raja Yogaya, Hatha Vidyopadishyate. chanted that enough, we wouldn't need to read the translation because it would flower within us what the meaning was. But seeing as we only have another 40 minutes or so, Yogin Swatmarama, after saluting first his guru Srinatha, explains Hatha Yoga for the attainment of Raja Yoga. So that's one translation. I'm going to read you from my book too. You can get the free download if you just Google Hatha Yoga Pradipika. You'll find a couple of free PDF downloads there. Or this book, mine is like a pre-copy, but what's your name again? Karen. Karen's got the one that has the cover. It's got like the Da Vinci guy on it. So you can order those from Amazon if you'd like. Prostrating first to the Guru, Yogi Swatmarama instructs the knowledge of Hatha Yoga only for Raja Yoga, the highest state of yoga. So the first verse was about to the highest Guru, and we learned that that's how all ancient yoga texts begin, bowing to the Guru, and the many reasons why we would do that first. So Swatmarama is the one who compiled all of these together. So he didn't exactly write these. It's kind of like the Yoga Sutras with Patanjali. Patanjali compiled these teachings. He took them from other, even more ancient yogic texts and put them into a system to help us study. It's the same thing with this. And this book is actually kind of similar to the Yoga Sutras. If you're familiar with them, there's 8 limbs in the Yoga Sutras, 8 different parts of the yoga practice. And this sort of takes out, like the lower practices are the ethical practices, and the higher ones are the higher meditation and the higher states. This kind of pulls from the middle teachings. It does asana, pranayama, physical teachings, with the idea that the body, the physical body, needs to be toned and sort of disciplined before it's able to sit for the higher states of meditation, and so that our energetic systems get cleaned out so that we're ready for the higher energy to move through us when that happens. So that's kind of what this whole book is about. So verse 2. So I love the commentary in this book. So I'll start reading to you. You feel free to chime in anytime, ask questions. Hatha Yoga is to be practiced for the sole purpose of preparing oneself for the highest state of Raja Yoga, which is Samadhi. So this is so huge. I stop like every 3 seconds. So we learned a lot last session about what Hatha Yoga means, the words, what it's for. So, we all know Hatha Yoga, part of Hatha Yoga is the physical asanas that we do. And we all know if we practice that it has many physical benefits, mental benefits, emotional benefits. And a lot of times we tend to focus on those benefits, and all of those benefits are wonderful. But really, what Hatha Yoga is meant for is not to get a limber body or to become more fit emotionally or mentally. It's for us to attain enlightenment. That's the purpose of yoga. Hatha Yoga, all yoga really, is the purpose is to attain enlightenment. So Samadhi is one of the stages we learn, and there's many different stages of enlightenment. So Samadhi is sort of like the end stage that's described in the Yoga Sutras. And then it goes on from there too. So that's why we do this. As one practices Hatha Yoga techniques, one's physical and mental potential begins to increase and unfold. We know that man utilizes only 1/10 of his total brain capacity. This means that 9/10 are lying dormant, waiting to be brought into action. So even that's just interesting. Like, we all know that we only use a portion of our brains. What is the other part for? Why is it there? Human beings are so miraculous. Just our physical bodies are such an incredible wonder. The systems, the way it works, it's got to be there for something, all that brain matter, right? So yoga says, let's try to tap into that sleeping brain matter and see what we can do with it. So when you do these practices, you're working on your physical body in a very, it's like chemistry experiment almost. You're changing yourself on a cellular level, so you're even changing the way your brain functions. So the idea is we can wake up the sleeping cells in the brain, and it carries some amazing powers in there, which we're going to learn about. Science calls the dormant brain the silent area. Little is known about its capacity, but neurologists say it has something to do with man's psychic capacity. Right? So even neurologists say that there's something to this. After long and arduous practice of yoga, the psychic potential manifests, maybe in the form of clairvoyance, clairaudience, telepathy, telekinesis, psychic healing, etc. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with at least some of those terms, right? So there's, maybe you've experienced them yourself, right? So it's also said often that we had these capabilities at one point and that we lost them along the way. So either way, it's not something that we're pulling from outer space into us or something external to us that we're bringing in with these yoga practices. It's something very deep within us, innate, even in a physical way, innate, that we're simply tapping into. So you might find it's like flexing a muscle, right? If you want your biceps to get bigger, you lift weights or you do chaturangas, right? If you want your clairvoyance to open up, you do yoga practices. And it's not like we all think, this third eye opening or intuition. We think that it's some magical thing that the sky is going to part and the future is going to make itself known to us. But when you actually start to do the practices and do these observances like we did in our meditation, you'll notice it's much subtler than that. So you might we think at first we notice these coincidences. It's like, why was I thinking about this person who is so far away and I haven't thought about them in so long, and the next thing you know, they call you, and it's like, oh, can't believe I was just thinking about you. But the more you do these practices, the more often it happens, and you're like, this is kind of weird now that all of these coincidences are happening. And that's the beginning of these higher powers opening up. Your connection to that person. You sent out a brain wave and a heart wave, some sort of wave from you, a thought or an emotion, and that person felt it and responded to it. So your ability to transmit and to receive both become more refined. So the more you start to observe these things, the more they happen and the bigger they can happen, and then you can start to play around with them and consciously flex those muscles. And okay, let me think about Jess. Let me see if I can send a thought to her. You can even practice with another person and see if you can communicate thoughts. You can do it with cards. You can practice. So all different ways to it. You guys are like, yeah, we do that all the time.
You see us winking.
So yeah, feel free to chime in anytime. Are you guys practicing stuff like this?
Well, we live together, so
Yeah, it's like
it's probably.
you go to send a text message and you're getting the call or whatever.
Yeah, especially when you live with somebody. Yeah, you start to become very in sync with, like women who live together. Your menstrual cycles start to sync. Right, that's just on a physical level. Right, start to sync on a lot of other levels too. Okay.
You can feel it when it doesn't too.
Yeah,
because there's been people roommates that I've been with that haven't cycled in it, and there was tension. Like everything about it.
And that's part of all of this awakening the other senses too. You can sense something energetically, and then it comes out in a more manifest form, like tension or arguing or not getting on, right? It's because you're not syncing. You're right, exactly.
And it can be done too without people, with just energy in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
high
there's an energy to everything. Yeah, your environment, for sure. So these dormant things that become awakened in us, in yoga are called siddhis, and you can think of them as superpowers. I keep seeing these things lately, like everybody's into superpowers lately. Like, what's your superpower? I'm like, yeah, what is your superpower? I saw a bumper sticker today that said, I'm so bad at jokes and punchlines, so I'm sure I'll mess it up, but it was something like, saving dogs is my superpower. I was like, oh, that's cool. But things like, you know, the Yoga Sutras talk about this a lot. You can, when these dormant parts of our brains become awakened and you get into the higher states, you might be able to be in two places at one time. You might be able to walk through a wall. You might be able to make yourself infinitesimally small or infinitesimally large, right? So there's a lot of different...
Hanuman.
Hanuman, yeah. Hanuman can leap across oceans, right? So,
And then with the energy too, what was I going to say?
Gun. It's like the Hanuman. So even these, like, this is part of the journey. The awakening of these superpowers is part of the journey. But remember too, even these things are byproducts, like getting a more limber body, like becoming clairvoyant is a byproduct of your yoga practice. Why? Why is it a byproduct and not a goal? Because what?
It's not the point.
No, because it's not the point. What's the point?
The point is to become enlightened.
Right, the point is to
Wake
become
up.
enlightened. So you get a physical body, great. You move on to the next step. You become more emotionally stable, awesome. You move on to the next step. You can fly. That's pretty cool, right? But you have to keep dropping all of these, just like in your meditation, the letting go, letting go. So the cities can actually be a trap too, because it's so exciting. And has anybody ever tried to lucid dream before?
To lose one?
Lucid? Become conscious inside of your dream while you're still asleep?
Yeah.
Like Vanilla Sky?
I don't remember that.
I've done some plant medicine before that's like that.
You what?
Some plant medicine.
If you've ever, I've practiced it for a while. I actually took a course. Yeah, right. I took a course to try to do this. And it was so exciting. Like at first, you keep a dream journal. It's like flexing the muscle thing. You keep a dream journal, and so you start to become a little bit more conscious of your dreams. And then eventually I did wake up in my dream, and I was so excited that I was awake that I woke myself up. And that kept happening. I was like, I'm gonna fly! And it was like, oh my God! And then I was like, oh my God, I'm awake! How can I fly if I'm awake? So, it takes a lot of practice and all this, but yeah, so, point of progress. Moving beyond them. Some people regard them as grand achievement, but they are only temporary manifestations which can even hinder further spiritual progress. So again, temporary. They're like, it happens because you get to a certain level of practice, but then you move on and they don't happen anymore because they've propelled you to, or you've just moved through that phase and they fall away. We talked about this last week, like how a rocket ship goes up into outer space, and it's huge when it starts on the ground, and it's got all these engines propelling it up. But when those engines have finished their job, they fall off, and then it's just this little thing that's shooting into outer space. That's what happens with all these yoga practices. The goal of all yogic sadhana is spiritual practice, is to discover and experience the universal spirit within. And if siddhis are indulged in, they take one away from the ultimate experience. Therefore, they are better ignored as they are not the desired fruit of Hatha Yoga. So again, the whole point of this verse is the point of Hatha Yoga is enlightenment. Good? Questions?
Not to be dense. Will you explain cities once again? Obviously, you don't mean them
Mhm.
as a metaphor, correct? You don't mean an actual city.
Siddhi. It's the Sanskrit word.
C-I-T-I-E-S.
Yeah, good question. No, good question.
Okay.
Yes. Sanskrit word, cities.
I know. I was
city is the superpower.
What about, like, as you're experiencing it, truly remembering it so you don't forget it, but still being able to let it go, but I'm trying to figure out what I was saying.
Yeah,
Because you want to remember it.
absolutely. I don't think there's any.
Because that's what I was doing
Forget
whenever,
it.
because
Yeah.
this was my first, yoga was my first yoga class and I was crying.
Like
I was
today?
crying, yeah, and I was just like, I don't want to move, I just want to remember what this feels like, and then I want to let it go.
That is awesome.
So, I was so excited.
So excited.
Lucky you! Oh my gosh, that.
I was like this, and I was like, I'm not moving.
I just got chilled all over.
Yeah.
That is amazing, and that is
just.
Yeah, it's
Great.
really
That
It makes
is-
me cry too, but for different reasons. It's like Chaturanga number 37.
Right? Now that is a perfect example of things that happen to you when you practice yoga, especially as a beginner, because this spirit, your absolute consciousness, higher consciousness, it wants to draw us all back to it. We are it, but we've forgotten it, so we're drawing ourselves back to ourselves. And we come into a practice like this, like maybe your friend said, you should come to yoga, it's really great. Or maybe I sit here.
Yeah, she was trying to get me here for
150
like
times.
Yeah.
And it finally worked.
Right, sometimes you cannot make it happen. You can go and prepare yourself and make yourself
See,
available.
I knew I wasn't ready yet. I had too many things going on.
You're kidding though, but if it happened, you are.
Mm-hmm.
If you're here, you're ready. There's no way you would be drawn to here if you weren't ready. That's how it works. And sometimes when you think you are the least ready is when you are the most ready, for sure. So experiences like that, especially in the beginning, especially if you think you're not ready, you're not good enough, you're not this, you're not that. That's to say, this is real, and you have had an experience now. Remember this experience. Keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. You might not have that experience again ever for the whole rest of your yoga practice. Right? You might have it again tomorrow. You might have it every time you practice. But it's like we talked about last week too. Like we have to have a little bit of faith to get into the practice. To say, well, if everybody else says it's really great, maybe I should try it. Or if these books tell me that I can achieve enlightenment, then maybe I can. But it's just an idea until you have personal experience. And once you have a personal experience, then you can say, oh, it really does work. And then you don't need your faith anymore because you have proof. Right? So the faith is just a tiny little leap until you can get proof. That's awesome.
I've been doing yoga 6 years and I still cry.
Good. I've been doing it for 23 years and I still cry sometimes. Thank God.
I have a lot going on. I've been crying out of sadness and frustration. That was just this cry of just feeling connected. And just like when I was over my heart and I just was like, this is just about me. It's not about anything going on around me. It's just about me, and parts of my body that were really sore and tense just were relaxed too. And I was just like,
That's it.
this is what I've always wanted yoga to be, but I just wasn't ready yet, and here I am now ready. And like you said, I'm probably never gonna stop now.
That's why you have experiences like that, because it, whatever it is, doesn't want you to stop. It wants to hooked you right in, and now it's like.
So, when you say cities, is it like kind of like an endless staircase? Like you get to you get to maybe an awareness, and then you let it go, and it brings you to the next.
I think that there are I think that the levels of awareness are like that. Cities are their own thing, though. Like cities are very specific superpowers, clairvoyance, telekinesis, things like that. So and they're very way kind of down the
Where does
line.
intuition fall into that?
Intuition's sort of like one of the beginning stages of it. You'll start to sense. It's really just an energy that you're picking up on. You're sensing an energy that something is going to happen, and then you might be able to work with that and create more form to it, and then actually know what it is. But it starts out, it's just like it's a feeling, and you might feel it in this energy center, and this is kind of where your intuition starts. And in your lower energy center, it's as like a primal feeling, and then it moves up to here when it becomes
Which one is this right here? Which part of the chakra?
This is your Manipura chakra, your
Okay.
solar plexus chakra.
Okay.
Yeah.
Today we were talking about the Svadhisthana, the second below the navel. Is that what
That was what you, okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
But your experience, what you just described, I mean, that's samadhi. That's enlightenment. You had a taste of it,
Mhm.
right? So the idea is that with all these practices, you can go into that state at will, whenever you want to, for as long as you want to, and then eventually we'll be released into that state completely when we shed this physical body. So that's the idea, is to let you know how sweet it is.
That's a nice place to be.
It's nice, exactly. It's a nice place to
Isn't that why
be.
there's a lot of yogis that, like, when you hear them retire to the mountain, you sit there and.
Yeah. What more could you possibly?
Yeah.
It's nothing better, right? Isn't that like one of the best feelings you ever had? Maybe the best feeling you ever had in your life. Connection.
Mm-hmm.
You know, part of something. You know, it's part of something very large. You know,
I don't
that's-
really need to know exactly what it is and explaining it, I just know I'm part of it. And I'm okay with just that. That's the part that's.
Yeah. I'm so excited. Yeah, and now you're going to go out. You're already doing it. Like, I can feel you from here. You're going to go out into your world now, and that's the energy that you're going to radiate to everybody around you, and that's going to elevate them too, and they're going to feel connected and loved and part of something. And then it like goes back and forth and gets bigger. Very, very, very cool. All right. I don't know. Maybe we should go on after.
See, what it started with real quick is that I've always been into I've been really paying attention to crystals and stones and learning all that stuff, and I actually just was drawn to the rhodochrosite and the moonstone. That's what I'm wearing right now, so.
So you've already been tapping
Yeah.
into this, yeah, and the stones have obviously, a tremendous amount of energy. So if your energy is subtle enough to sense the energy of a stone or to be affected by it, then yeah, you're already in it. You're already doing it.
It's my dance.
Cool.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take it off.
This is what this is all about. It's not about me, it's about this. This is the satsang, it's the group that makes it happen.
And the stones sometimes they'll help keep you grounded to where you're not just disappear.
Yeah, I'm wearing these whether or not they match my outfit or not. If I take it off, I feel very disconnected.
Cool. Yeah, it's when you have experienced a subtle feeling like that, go with it. Like, go as deep as you can with it. Yeah, if the feeling that you're getting is grounded and connected with those, where is it, earrings?
The earrings.
Yeah, then keep those suckers in.
Yeah.
Just don't worry
I
about
was-
diamonds.
Good, yeah. And then they trick them too. There's always a trick. There's always like the next step. Then what you feel this subtle energy, but don't let your mind then say, I only feel grounded when I have these earrings on and I won't feel it, because then it turns into a mental thing and not an energetic thing.
Yeah, right now I'm holding on to, I'm wearing them, and at one point when I'm going through I'm moving and everything, and once I do that, I'm going to start testing it and going off, so I'm not relying on it as well, so it's not a crutch.
Yeah, that's what this is what this book is all about.
See, I'm happy with the book now.
Experimenting. It's about experimenting with what is available to us in your own self, in your own practice, in your own life. And then the things that work, you keep. The things that don't work, you throw them out. Right? That's exactly what these Hatha yogis did. They went and they left society and said, we're going to use our bodies, we're going to use nature, and we're going to see what we can come up with. And this is what they came up with. Very cool.
What's the time frame of the book? Like how long? Like you said, this is the beginning of the beginning.
It's about 2,000 years old, but it comes from texts that are as ancient as 5,000 years old. Little pieces from them. So yeah, it's been around a long time.
And are you asking how many sutras are in it? How many phrases, or just
Just in general, where the all the information has been passed down from generation to generation, how long it has gone on.
Oh, okay.
Thousands of years.
It's a lot of,
Rhythm and palm leaves,
it's a
right?
lot of practice and a lot of, the only word I can come is understanding. that's been
Yeah,
passed
and a
on
lot of
from person
honing
to the next.
of this. Like it comes from Hinduism and Buddhism is kind of extracted from those teachings, which are massive. You know, first of all, those are, well, they're religions, and this is a philosophy. It's not a religion. So it kind of already, you know, the body of Hinduism and Buddhism is massive, and it extracted the philosophy from those things and left behind the religious practices, and then it further extracted the essential practices and left behind, you know, the lesser practices. So it's a very like, this is why like the sutras, and they're in verses like this, they're packed with information and understanding and energy. You know, just chanting it in Sanskrit is, you know, wildly powerful, because the words were created, like every letter, every symbol, like very specifically to have a vibrational effect on us. So that's why it takes so long to get through a whole verse, because there's, like, what we're doing is extracting it, you know, like it's like putting it in water and letting it, you know, expand. So, yeah, that's what this is about, getting deep. Excellent. I think we might have time for one more, which is shocking. So let's go. Okay. So the next one is the one that starts with Brantya.
Brahmantya,
Bahumata.
Bahumata,
Dvante.
Dvante,
Raja Yoga.
Raja Yoga,
Majanatam.
Majanatam,
Hatha Pradipikam.
Hatha Pradipikam,
Date.
Date,
Svatmarama.
Svatmarama,
Kripkara.
Kripkara,
Brantya Bahumata Dvante.
Brantya,
Bahumata Dvante. Raja Yoga Majanatanam.
Raja Yoga, Majanatanam,
I think I added another syllable in there. Hatha Pradipikam Date.
Hatha Pradipikam
Date. Svatmarama Kripakara.
Svatmarama, Kripakara,
Brantya Bahumata Dvante. Raja Yoga Majanatam.
Brantya Bahumata Dvante, Raja Yoga Majanatam,
Hatha Pradipikam Date. Svatmarama Kripkara.
Hatha Pradipikam Date, Svatmarama Kripakara,
Brantya Bahumata Dvante. Raja Yoga Majanatam. Hatha Pradipikam Date. Svatmarama Kripakara. Brantya Bahumata Dvante. Raja Yoga Majanatam. Hatha Pradipikam Date. Svatmarama Kripakara. Okay, one more time together. Brantya Bahumata Dvante. Raja Yoga Majanatam. Hatha Pradipikam Date. Svatmarama Kripakara. Om. Never feels complete unless we
That sounds like a dish I wanted to eat.
Good, it's supposed to be yummy, yeah. So, owing to the darkness arising from the multiplicity of opinions, people are unable to know the Raja Yoga. Compassionate Swatmarama composes the Hatha Yoga Pradipika like a torch to dispel it. Now this translation, that sounds yummy too, doesn't it? Sounds like a poem. The highest state of Raja Yoga is unknown due to misconceptions, and then in parentheses, darkness, created by varying ideas and concepts. In goodwill and as a blessing, Swatmarama offers light on Hatha Yoga. There is a proverb, many sages, many opinions. The highest goal in yoga is attainment of Kaivalya, the point at which Raja Yoga culminates. So there's a lot of terminology, Sanskrit words, and there's a lot of different Sanskrit words to mean similar things. So Kaivalya is like another phase or version of samadhi, enlightenment. And Raja Yoga it's the royal path, is what it's known as. Ultimately, all spiritual practices and branches of yoga lead to that state, enlightenment. But there are as many ways of reaching the goal as there are individuals in the world. If we try to follow and believe that every path is applicable to ourselves, we will never attain the final experience. So, two really important things there. Many paths, many paths. There are as many paths as individuals. So, just because this works for you and you had this experience doesn't mean it's going to work for somebody else. They might experience it through Christianity, through Buddhism, through chopping wood, through whatever it is, right? There are millions and millions of different ways to experience what you experience today. So let each to his own. Let everyone find the path, find whatever path they can. And then the other part of what's important here is once you seek, go ahead, seek. When I first started seeking, I went everywhere. I went to Buddhist meditations, Zen retreats, yoga classes all over, Gurdjieffian philosophy, Egyptian mysticism, everything I would go to. And I had an experience exactly like yours in a yoga class. And when I had that experience, I stopped looking and I went deep into the yoga practice. So when you find a path that works for you, stop switching back and forth. So instead of going sideways back and forth on all the paths, you start to go up on the one path that you choose. Don't doubt your choice. A person's individual method has to be systematic. Whether one practices karma yoga, which is the yoga of service, you can experience enlightenment through serving others, selfless service, like Mother Teresa. Bhakti yoga, which is devotional yoga, maybe chanting like the Hare Krishnas, they chant and chant and chant and they achieve enlightenment. Kriya yoga, yoga of action. Jnana yoga, the yoga of knowledge. Zen Buddhism, or a combination of a few varying techniques. One has to have an ordered system, and that system has to be followed from beginning to end without diverging and trying other systems and gurus, teachers along the way. So all of those systems that I mentioned, there are volumes that explain just each one of those systems. Right? So if you're trying to get through every volume of every system, it's going to take a lot longer than if you just choose one system and follow that.
So say you choose one system and then you go and you get halfway through it, and then you choose and you get to another one. Is it saying that you have to go all the way back, or can you start where you went all?
Well, they're related. I mean, they're all bringing you through the same phases. But if you were, say, for example, after practicing yoga for 10 years
Right.
and getting deep into yoga philosophy and the deeper aspects, if you then decided I'm going to go practice Zen Buddhism instead, you wouldn't have any idea how to do that. So you'd have to go to square one about how do I sit, what do I focus on. So just the logistics of, you'd have to go back to learn that. And then maybe after you learned the logistics of it, then maybe your spiritual progression will bring you there more quickly.
Right.
But yeah.
Do you think some people are meant to go to different ones and have an idea and help guide people to help them find their way?
Yeah, everybody's drawn to. You're drawn to what is your nature? Your nature attracts like, but your nature even is determined by your karma from previous lifetimes. So it's really your own spiritual path just becoming evident. So if we're all here in doing this together, it means that we've been yogis for many lifetimes, and that this is what draws us to it. If we had been, practicing something else, then we'd be attracted to that. So you are where you're supposed to be, no matter where you are. I love that. That means there are no mistakes, right? There's no accidents. There's no mistakes.
I used to see that saying and get so annoyed because I was like, that's so obvious that wherever you are, there you are. And then one day it hit me, I was like, oh!
Right?
I'm a complete idiot.
Those are the best realizations, the things that are right in front of you, and all of a sudden your mind explodes or your heart explodes, and you're like, I got it. Yeah. It's all right. That's all of this stuff. It's just like it's all right there. It's all right there for us to see. We just have our blinders on, and then all of a sudden, sometimes the blinders come up, and it's like, oh.
I mean, there's no mistakes, but you can make it easy on yourself.
Well, you can make it easy on yourself
Or harder.
by following
Right.
the rules. Like if you were to practice the yamas, the ethical restraints, and the niyamas, and you came to your asana practice and you did your yes, you could make it easier. But is that easy?
No.
Right? That takes a huge
Yeah, I've
amount of
taken
discipline.
along, like, as far as challenges in life, so you have a situation, let's say, like, let's say with relationships or something like that, and you have a difficult time with this relationship, and then somehow you get out of that relationship, and another similar one comes in, and you have a chance to do it differently, but, sometimes you don't. And then it's like you build until you finally get it. But if you were to get it the first time, it'd be like.
If you got it the first time and you really learned the lesson,
Right.
you wouldn't have to keep doing it over and over again. For sure.
But that's where yoga comes in, and it helps because when you're
does.
clear-headed and the situation comes back around again, and you just got through practicing or something like that, then
Yes.
you can handle it.
Yes.
Or the new one doesn't know you're crazy.
Part of that too is that you're in tune with yourself, and maybe the other person is too, or I think that's where that comes in. So that's what you can get out of yoga, is because people can do that all day, but a lot of times they're looking for what they want in the other person rather than looking for what they want within themselves. And then
All of that is true, but that's like what is happening on the surface level. What is happening energetically and spiritually on a deeper level is that you two your natures drew each other towards each other because you had something to work out.
I was about to say that. I just read something where you are drawn to people, the closest relationships, or somebody who is mirroring something that you think that that you don't like. You might nitpick, but if you take a moment to think and observe and think about what you're supposed to learn, and to realize that there is something there to learn about that relationship, no matter how good or bad it is. And if you do take that time,
That's what I'm saying. If you don't do it, and then that relationship just falls apart, and that person goes somewhere else, then something else will come back to you.
Yeah, it's kind
You
of.
know, then you get to try your chance to do it again.
It's kind of like that other person. It's true. It's almost like the other person is irrelevant. It's they're to you, and you are to them in a way. Like we're working out our spiritual lessons with each other, and that's it. Yeah, we have to bounce things off of each other and learn things from each other and mirror each other. And when we start to realize that, that's another big awareness. Like, you might go through all these relationships and be like, why do I always go out with these guys who treat me terribly? It's like, well, why do you always go out? That's one of those like aha moments where everybody can see it except for you, And then when you do see it and you start to examine it, then maybe you can figure it out, right? And then you can really start to work on it. So sometimes it's like it's like the skipping record thing. It's like, you might not notice it's skipping for a while, and after a while you're like, God, what is that noise? And then you can pick the needle up and move it, right? That's exactly what this stuff is, this karma, this working it out. It's like, you got to work on your anger. Okay, I'm angry.
Yeah, so you can eliminate the karma, or you can not sit in your karma and,
Yeah.
Or it was meant to just be brief too. Like for me, in a relationship that I'm easing out of right now, I felt like I needed protected, and we both felt protected until the point that when the relationship should have been over a while ago, we stayed in it, thinking that that was what we wanted to stay in because of how we felt. How we were talking about holding on and not going to that next step, and I don't remember what word.
Lascivious?
Yeah, and going through that, and I don't remember where I was going at with that now, but it was just it doesn't. I was holding on to it, and then now all of a sudden I'm realizing I don't need protection, and I didn't really need it, and it was there, and it did feel I did get that feeling from it, but it's time to let it go and to move forward. And ever since I decided that about 5 weeks ago, everything's just started opening up. Like everything is happening without really that much effort.
Right.
And that's a pretty good place to be compared to where I was at.
Yeah, once you learn the lesson, and then you become more aligned with your own higher self, which then means you're more in line with the universe, and then the universe starts to move things, to open doors and make things happen.
Well, I should have did this one.
Yeah.
But then again, I know why I did it.
But it happened when there's a chant. It's Urvarukamiva bandhanam. It's like when the cucumber is ripe, it falls from the vine. You don't pull it from the vine; it falls from the vine, and you can't make it. You can't make it.
I've been really wanting cucumber, loving it.
See?
I know you've been bad.
There you go.
That's cool that you use that analogy.
Well, that's the energy. That's what happens.
She did.
It is. Yeah. So go eat cucumbers.
Just like you knew how many papers to print. Is this exactly the right amount of people?
Yes, it was because Catherine didn't come in. Yeah, and that one seat was for her, and she didn't come. She told me she was coming.
You were coming.
I didn't know you were.
And it's also called super soul. The Hindus talk about that. This ability to know things without knowing that you know them.
Yeah.
What's it called? Is it written on here? It's not written on here, is it? It's called Super Soul?
Super soul?
Okay.
I have a lot of Hare Krishna friends, and they talk about it quite a bit. It's just knowing something larger than yourself without really knowing why or that you know it even.
Trust.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was thinking when I was printing them of you talking about no matter however many chairs you put out is the number of people, and I thought maybe 10 people will come, and I was like, no, not 10.
It's neat to start to play with it, and you're like, wow, that was great. It's like The Secret. We talked about The Secret. If you guys know that movie and book, it's about putting out there what you want to attract. It's powerful. And let's finish up with this. We're already over. Okay. Swatmarama, so it's the word offers is in this translation. Swatmarama is not preaching or propagating, but humbly showing a way, offering, which may be easier for the average person to follow in order to come closer to Raja Yoga. So that's, I again, with the whole focus. It's an offering. He's saying, this worked for me, maybe it'll work for you. Good? Cool. Let's out together then. Just close your eyes, just at the beginning of class or before, and just take a moment again. Just scan your physical body. Scan your mind. Scan your emotions. Just note any changes, great or subtle, from before and after you walked in the room. Notice if you feel any pulsation, vibration. Bring your awareness inside of that pulsation or vibration. And we'll send that out on the waves of Om 3 times. Deep inhale. We bow to the highest teacher in all living things, Om Guru Satguru Bhagwan Ki. Namaste. Namaste. Thank you all so much for being here and for participating, for your energy. Spread it around.
This is so good.
Good. Good. It's supposed to feel great. Yeah.